You're already seeing the rain in Culman, but it's going to be the most intense part of the storm that we're tracking. That's going to move your way just after the 7 o'clock hour. Fairview at 7:24. Eventually, folks in Holly Pond, you'll see this stronger core of this storm moving in once we get closer to 7:30. And then eventually into the Summit area, if this storm survives that long, once we get to 7:44. A lot of times with these summer storms, they flare up during the heating of the afternoon. We had cloud cover much of the day, but we got enough sunshine developing this afternoon that these storms were able to blossom, at least isolated in nature, across portions of central Alabama. And so the time right now is 6:46. Sunset tonight's at 8:01. As that sun begins to go down lower and lower in the western sky, temperatures will begin to drop off, and once the temperatures drop off, the instability drops off, and once that happens, obviously these storms will quickly die out, because that's really the only thing fueling them right now. So we have an updated look. It looks like the National Weather Service has trimmed the warning just a little bit, so we're kind of focused in now more on this area that we are watching right in here. So the National Weather Service in Huntsville still focused in on this area right here. Tornado warning continues until 7 p.m. Let's see what we have here. Confirmed tornado is located at 646 near Good Hope, or just west of Culman, moving east at 20 miles an hour. So it looks like the speed perhaps has lessened just a little bit. Still some lightning showing up, indicating that the storm is obviously still moderately strong right now, and that potential continues for a tornado or two. I don't know if it's going to be a continuous tornado on the ground. Likely the kind of situation when you have broad rotation in the atmosphere like this, lowerings of the cloud base, that there could be just brief spin-up tornadoes that occur, and usually in these kind of circumstances, wind shear is light, so I wouldn't expect any strong tornadoes, just very brief, weak tornadoes possible. So once again, we're looking at the city of Culman right here. Obviously, all this in Culman County. Here's I-65. Here's Highway 278. You can see, obviously, Highway 31 as well there, stretching near 65. The heavy rain stretching from Culman and points west. And so it's going to be this area west of 65 that we're still closely monitoring for that broad rotation in the atmosphere. Several lightning strikes still showing up in this storm. The heavier rain continues just north of you folks in Crane Hill. With that eastward movement, we're going to put another storm track on for you. Right around this area is where we're seeing the broad rotation moving east at around 20 miles an hour. And so that puts the city of Culman under the warning at 7:14, Pleasant View at 7:29. It looks like Fairview at 7:42. And it looks like actually just now a new warning was just issued by the National Weather Service in Huntsville for this small storm that we are tracking right here east of Huntsville. And it looks like right in this area, right along Alabama Highway 91, perhaps more rotation showing up with this particular storm. Let's see what they're saying. Looks like another confirmed tornado, so perhaps another brief touchdown with this storm right along Alabama Highway 91. It's going to be right in this area. This one is a very small storm. One lightning strike showing up, in fact, just in the last 15 minutes. There's a second one. And so it's going to be right in this area here, likely south winds coming up into the storm, more of a north wind on the backside. And so the rotation is going to be right here, right along Alabama Highway 91. So to reiterate here, we have now two separate tornado warnings in effect, both of them in Culman County, both of them issued by the National Weather Service office in Huntsville. We have the warning that's in effect just to the east of Huntsville, and we have the warning that's in effect and includes the city of Culman. So two active warnings in effect. The one for the city of Culman was the first, the original warning that was issued. That one's in effect until 7 p.m. That storm tracking off to the east, this storm out ahead of this main area, this main cluster of thunderstorms. This one's drifting now more toward the north and east. We'll watch really closely whether or not any portion of Blount County is added to this tornado warning. Blount County warnings would come from the National Weather Service office in Birmingham. Expand the view again one more time so you can get your bearings depending on where you live. For 98% of us, it's been a dry afternoon. And right now, it's mainly dry out there. We're looking at Birmingham. We're looking at Anniston, Gadsden. You're dry right now. Tuscaloosa, no weather worries whatsoever. And once again, many of these storms, they'll start to weaken as we go through the next 15, 30, 45 minutes. And so it's just one area, one cluster of storms that we're watching for that potential for severe weather. We've had a couple of confirmed brief touchdowns with these storms, and getting the newest information here. These are both confirmed tornadoes. An off-duty National Weather Service forecaster sees a strong wall cloud with the western Culman cell, but cannot confirm a tornado on the ground. So that's going to be this storm right here, a wall cloud showing up, but not able to confirm whether or not that tornado is still on the ground. Even back here in extreme southeastern Winston County near Ardell, near Smith Lake, this storm's showing the same kind of structure that this storm is showing. So we'll have to watch really closely whether or not this storm interacts with the same kind of boundary that's in place that was allowing these two storms to briefly allow touchdowns of what will likely end up being very weak tornadoes. Also just added a severe thunderstorm warning, and that's from the office in Birmingham. The National Weather Service office in Birmingham has issued a severe thunderstorm warning that includes much of Blount County, and so we'll have to watch whether or not, as this storm moves up into the portions of Blount County, if the National Weather Service office upgrades this warning to a tornado warning. But as of right now, we do have two active tornado warnings in effect. One of them includes the city of Culman, and so this storm we're watching right in this area that's moving off to the east. The other one right on now the Culman-Blount County line. This is a very small storm that we're tracking that's just drifting to the east and to the northeast right now. So what we're going to do here is we're going to put another couple of storm tracks on the map for you. We're going to show you a storm track for this first storm, the one that's farther off to the east. And this one's moving slow, only about 15 miles an hour. So here's some locations in this storm: Walter, Brooksville, Bright Star. As we go through the next 10 to 20 minutes or so, likely in Brooksville and Bright Star, your locations will not be impacted by this storm until after we get 7:15 or 7:30 or so. So likely by that point, this storm will have weakened. But if you do live just right in this area, right along the county line here of Culman and Blount, you do need to be in your safe place right now, because we do have reports of a tornado touchdown. Whether or not that's a weak tornado, still to be determined. A lot of times these summer storms do produce weak tornadoes, but it doesn't take a strong tornado to do damage. It doesn't take a strong tornado to be life-threatening. In fact, a lot of times we hear about severe thunderstorm warnings that are producing 40, 50, 60 mile an hour winds. They can down a tree. If that tree falls down on your home and you're not in a safe location, that obviously could be life-threatening as well. So we're going to watch this whole cluster of storms very closely. Once again, this one right in here, right on the Winston and Culman County line, while it's not warned currently, it's starting to show that same structure, likely interacting with whatever boundary, whatever outflow was left in place from earlier storms today through Culman County. So we're going to have to watch that one really closely. But as of right now, no warning issue for that storm. We're going to have to watch the other two storms, though, very closely. Let's go ahead and take a look at Culman. Once again, we'll go street level for you so you can see exactly where the rain is coming down. It's moderately heavy right now in downtown Culman. Same story, 10th Street southeast, Oak Drive northeast, Main Avenue, also seeing that moderately heavy rain. Not a lot of lightning in these storms just over the last 10 to 15 minutes. You can see the overall lightning count, in fact, looks like it has dropped off. So hopefully that's a sign that these storms will be weakening here over the next 15 to 20 minutes or so. All right, so the time is now 6:54. This tornado warning that includes the city of Culman still in effect until 7 p.m. The storm out ahead of it, still tornado warned for a small sliver of eastern Culman County, just along Alabama Highway 91 and points to the east. And now this storm is trying to cross over into Blount County, where we do have a severe thunderstorm warning in effect for Blount County. Brand new sweep coming in on the WVTM 13 live Doppler. Incredibly valuable in these kind of situations as we track these storms, of course, in real time. It looks like we have a brand new tornado warning that was just issued by the National Weather Service office in Huntsville. It's no longer a confirmed tornado. So at 6:54, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located over Good Hope or near Culman, and that is moving east now at 25 miles an hour. So this is likely going to replace the original tornado warning. So it looks like now the storm is starting to move more down toward the south and east rather than due east. So that puts it on a new track. If you live in the city of Culman, officially you're under your tornado warning until 7 p.m., but I want to stress it does look like this storm is now beginning to move more down toward the south and east rather than due east. So with that in mind and the movement around 20 to 25 miles an hour, we're going to put a new storm track on so you can see exactly which areas will be affected by this storm over the next 15 to 30 to 45 minutes. Obviously, in Good Hope, right now you need to be in your safe place. And talking about safe places, what does that mean? Basically, you want to be in an interior room of your house. You want to put as many walls between you and the outside as possible. So a good place would be perhaps an interior closet, an interior hallway, something that doesn't have any windows. And that's if you don't have a basement. If you have a basement, that's the best place to be. You want to be underground. That's the safest place to be in these kind of situations. But if you don't have a basement, an interior room on the lowest level of your house. You don't want to be on the second floor. You want to be on the lowest level and away from any windows or any other structures that could injure you if the winds do begin to pick up. So some other locations in the path of this storm. We've been talking a lot about you folks in Huntsville at 7:16. Perhaps if this second storm does hold together, that'll be moving your way. Garden City at 7:23. Garden City, you've dealt with several tornadoes just in the past several years, whether they be weak or moderately strong. We talk about you folks a lot in Garden City. High Rock 7:37. Sugar Creek at 7:41. And then if this storm, does survive its trek all the way into Blount County, perhaps places like Cleveland, a Little Warrior, once we get closer to the 8 o'clock hour. But I would expect that these storms would start to weaken as we get closer to the 7:30 and especially 8 o'clock time frame. And once again, that's just because these storms today are diurnally driven. Basically, that means they're thriving on the heating of the day. As those temperatures got up into the 80s with the sunshine that came out this afternoon, these storms formed. And as the sun does begin to go down, temperatures start to drop, these storms likely will begin to weaken. All right, so to recap for you, we technically do have 3 tornado warnings in effect. This one here that includes the city of Culman, that's set to expire in 2 minutes at 7 p.m. We have this new warning that's in effect until 7:30 for this portion of the storm that's drifting now down toward the south and east. And then this small storm out ahead of the main cluster that we are tracking, this one is tornado warning for another 15 minutes or so. It's now beginning to move into Blount County. We'll have to watch to see whether or not this warning is extended into Blount County. I have not seen any signs just yet, at least, from the National Weather Service office in Birmingham that would actually occur. There's the bigger picture again. Your time 6:58, and we're tracking just one cluster, one area of thunderstorms here across north central Alabama. Everywhere else, it's dry right now. It's dry in Birmingham. In fact, it's a beautiful evening in the Birmingham metro. It's beautiful right now in Tuscaloosa. We have clouds around. It's warm. It's muggy, but no thunderstorms anywhere nearby. And so it's just this one area that we're watching here through portions of Culman County. We've had several reports now, if you're just tuning in to recap, of brief tornado touchdowns. What likely will end up being weak tornadoes, but we don't know that for sure. We've had pictures sent in. I've seen them on social media. Wall clouds, lowering of the cloud base, and what looks to be brief tornado touchdowns. And that was earlier as this storm was back here in western Culman County. But now we've had indications that this storm right in here has had a wall cloud and a brief touchdown, perhaps still a funnel cloud showing up with that storm. And just most recently, this storm right here, right along 65, that's drifting down toward the southeast. Now, latest in from Culman County Emergency Management, there are no indications of any damage just yet. And so, obviously, these storms are still ongoing. There's still the possibility that one of these tornadoes could touch down and cause damage. But as of right now, the good news is there are no reports of any damage just yet. But we have had reports of tornadoes touching down briefly, hopefully in very rural areas. And so that's why we're continuing to cut in here to programming to let you know about the locations of these storms. All right, let's see what we have going on here. All right, so National Weather Service in Huntsville saying that basically everything started spinning like a top as these storms moved in to Culman County from Winston County. So they're now keeping an eye on the storms that are now moving back into Culman County right in this area. So they're watching these storms very closely. So evidently there certainly is some sort of boundary that's in place here in Culman County, because none of these storms exhibited any sort of rotation 30 minutes ago. We were tracking them. I was live on air on WVTM 13 News at 5 and again at 6 o'clock, and they were just disorganized, kind of messy, random pop-up pulse, we call them, showers and thunderstorms. They developed with the heating of the day in Marion County, portions of Lamar County. They looked disorganized. There was absolutely no indications of rotation. But as soon as these storms crossed out of Winston County and moved into Culman County, they started to show that rotation. And so apparently there is some sort of boundary in place that's allowing these storms to form and allowing these storms to become briefly tornadic. You can see the first storm that we were tracking, that tornado warning has now been canceled. The storm has moved into Blount County, where there is a severe thunderstorm warning in effect. But as of this point, no signs of any tornado on the ground from this particular storm, the small one. They're now moving through portions of Blount County. So we now are left with just one active tornado warning. It's going to be now south of the city of Culman. Now, originally, these storms looked like they were headed right for you folks in the city of Culman, but now they've they started to dive more down to the south and east. And so they're crossing 65 south of downtown Culman, and they're moving more down toward the south and east. So while we're here, let's go ahead and draw another storm track on here so you can see the motion of the storm relative to where you live. It's moving to the south and east at about 20 to 25 miles an hour. Center Community 716, Garden City at 727. And then, of course, if this storm does survive its trek into Blount County, here's some of the other locations that could be affected. Really don't think, though, that it's going to be lasting much longer. In fact, indications here on the WVTM 13 live Doppler as we get minute-by-minute looks at those changing conditions. It does look like the storm perhaps has weakened quite a bit over the last 15 to 30 minutes or so. We're not seeing the heavy rainfall showing up in shades of orange and red like we were a little while ago, and also nowhere near as much lightning in this particular storm as we were tracking about 5 to 10 minutes ago. So the one active tornado warning continues until 7:30. We still, though, are tracking the two isolated storms that you can see south and southwest of the tornado warning storm. So this one that's approaching Bremen, just west of Bremen there in Culman County. We're going to have to watch that one closely. A couple lightning strikes on that storm. And then also this one, which is basically right on the Walker-Culman County line. That one's going to move north and east into southern Culman County here very shortly. Let's see what else we have. All right, looks like we are going to get another tornado warning issued for this southern Culman County storm. So it looks like this one right in here is showing rotation, and a new tornado warning looks to be issued very shortly for this storm. It's amazing, absolutely amazing what we're seeing going on right now. These storms showed no signs of any rotation. The atmospheric setup today did not look conducive whatsoever for the formation of tornadoes. There was the threat for some damaging wind gusts, some straight line winds, but just not a lot of rotation in the atmosphere today. But obviously, there are boundaries in place left over from earlier storms and the interactions that are occurring right now at 7:04 this evening. Those interactions are leading to the formation of severe weather. So there's the bigger picture once again, where we do have the one active tornado warning here for the city of Culman and points down to the south. If you live in Culman, you are okay. It's down to your south that we have that active tornado warning. This storm, though, looks like it is starting to weaken. Now we're closely watching what's going on farther down to the south with these storms, which both of these are also exhibiting some broad rotation. I can also tell you the storm that's moved into Blount County, this one certainly has weakened as well just over the last 5 to 10 minutes. It looks like we have one lone lightning strike, which has occurred just in the last 5 minutes. And this storm is just gradually drifting now to the east and weakening with time. So we're closely watching what's going on in Culman. Culman's really the hotbed right now for this activity. One active tornado warning for this storm right in here. You can see some heavier reflectivity showing up. Not showing a classic sign of a hook, echo, anything like that we would normally track during the springtime months. And so this is a very, I guess you could call it unusual setup today during the summer. A lot of times in late June, unless we're tracking a tropical system coming in, you don't see tornado warnings like this. But with the boundary interactions that are in place, that's something that we have seen for today. So the severe thunderstorm warning for Blount County, that's been canceled. This storm is no longer a threat in the eyes of the National Weather Service. This storm right in here still showing some very broad rotation, and it's going to be now this storm just to the west of Bremen that we're now concerned with for the potential of another brief spin-up tornado. So this storm located near Smith Lake, just west of Bremen, 8 miles east of Arley, and that one's moving east at 20 miles an hour. So what we can do for you on this new storm, this new tornado warning, is draw another storm track for you with that motion and speed in mind. You can see if you live in the city of Bremen, you need to be in your safe place. Over the next 15 minutes, this storm will be moving in as it is now intensifying as it begins to interact with those boundaries that are in place in Culman County. Colony 736, perhaps smoke rise if this storm holds on for that long. So let's go ahead and kind of reset the picture for you here. It's 7:06. We've been on the air now for about 35 minutes ever since the end of our 6 o'clock newscast where these storms started to show rotation. We had a couple of reports that came in on social media indicating some broad rotation. We also saw some pictures that showed lowerings of the cloud base, a little wall cloud that formed in these, I guess we call them mini supercell like thunderstorms that formed today. And as the lowering continue to lower down toward the ground. Apparently, we did have several reports, several instances of brief tornado touchdowns, likely weak tornado touchdowns. We had the report just a little while ago from Culman County. There had been no damage reports, at least as of about 10 to 15 minutes ago. We hope, fingers crossed, that that will continue. But obviously, these storms still posing somewhat of a risk, enough of a risk in the eyes of the National Weather Service office in Huntsville that they've issued a second tornado warning that includes portions of southern and southwestern Culman County. So 2 active tornado warnings in effect. Both of them are in effect until 7:30 this evening. The time right now, 7:08. So these are in effect for another 22 minutes as we continue to track the progress of both of these storms drifting really slowly. I mean, we've been talking about Culman County now for the past 35 minutes, and these storms haven't moved much. They started right on the Winston-Culman County line when we came on the air, and still they're in the same location. But obviously 7:08 our current time. Sunset tonight's at 8:01. And so as we get closer to sunset, the only thing that's really fueling these thunderstorms right now, high instability values in the atmosphere and very weak but evidently strong enough wind shear in place for the rotation. But as we get closer to sunset tonight, as those temperatures begin to drop down degree by degree, these storms likely will quickly begin to weaken. So that's something that obviously we look forward to, hopefully sooner rather than later. If you live in the city of Culman, you're seeing the rain. You've had a couple lightning strikes, but the worst of the weather is down to your south. If you live in Culman, the city of Culman, you are no longer under the threat for a tornado. It's going to be these 2 areas right in here. This storm drifting down to the south and east, basically centered right along I-65 right now. So let's get a closer look at this first storm. Right on I-65, Dodge City area. In fact, I did see a report about 30 minutes ago. The Dodge City exit off of I-65 was one of the locations where a funnel cloud was reported. And so it's the same area that we've been tracking now for the last 30 to 35 minutes. Alabama Highway 69 there, right off of 65. That's the area that we're concerned with. It's going to be right in here. This is the location in the storm that we've seen some of that broad rotation, evidently strong enough rotation to drop down a brief tornado at least a couple of times. We've had confirmed reports of tornadoes a couple of times tonight already through portions of Culman County. But as of last check, there was not a confirmation on this storm recently. It's a radar indicated tornado with this particular storm. That means that there's indications on radar of turning of the winds with height in the atmosphere. So the possibility that this storm could produce a tornado as it drifts down toward the southeast. Let's see if we can see some of the latest information. Okay, so the other storm that we're tracking, the one farther back to the west, same story as this first one. This is a radar indicated tornado, and it's going to be basically right here over Smith Lake, the eastern portion of the lake, and approaching Bremen. You can see some of the lightning strikes just in the last 5 to 10 minutes or so. There's a heavier core to the storm that we're going to get a closer look at here. Approaching County Road 222. If I get out of the way, you can see that. County Road 222, this storm's approaching you. You can see some of the pink showing up in reflectivity. That's the core of the storm. And so there likely is some sort of broad rotation right in this area. And so you have the south winds coming up and then the turning of the winds back to the north on the west side of this broad circulation. So right in here is the area that we're concerned with. As we expand the view, you can kind of get your bearings on exactly where this is located. So I want to stress, if you live in Bremen, live in Dodge City, or anywhere located to the east or to the southeast of this storm or this storm, you need to be in your safe place right now. This is going to be for portions of southern and southwestern Culman County, where tornado warnings continue until 7:30 this evening. The time, 7:11. You need to be in your safe place. We talked about it a little while ago, but if you're just tuning in, where is your safe place? If you don't have a basement, then you need to be in an interior room of your house. The basement is the number one best place to be. Get there if you can. If you don't have a basement, the interior room, lowest level of your house. That's an important note. You want to be in the lowest level of your house. Make sure you have closed-toe shoes on. That way, in case there is any debris, you don't hurt yourself when you're trying to leave your safe place. It's always a good idea to have a helmet that protects your head. If not, get into the crouching position to protect yourself. There's a brand new radar sweep coming in from the WVTM 13 Live Doppler. This right here, it's the most valuable tool you could possibly have on television here in central Alabama today, tracking these storms. And these are the kind of storms where the structure is 100% important. So as we track the evolving structure of these storms, we're getting a minute-by-minute look at these changing conditions. This is your 3-minute advantage, and you want those 3 minutes to be on your side when you're possibly dealing with severe weather. So we'll go ahead and expand the view again for you folks so you can see exactly where we're looking at here. And it's just absolutely amazing right now that 98% of us are rain-free across central Alabama right now. The nearest storm, other than these storms in Culman County, are well back into portions of east central Mississippi, and those will die out here over the next 30 minutes or so. So it's one cluster of storms still interacting with boundaries in place from earlier storms today. It was earlier this morning and this afternoon that we had these storms pushing through North Alabama, and obviously they left some sort of boundary in place. We call them outflow boundaries, some sort of, we can call it just anomaly in the atmosphere compared to everywhere else, because everywhere else there was no threat for severe weather today, especially no threat for tornadoes. So there was obviously some sort of anomaly in place here in Culman County that as these storms moved out of Winston County, out of Marion County, and moved into Culman County, they interacted with whatever boundary was in place, and it sparked off these storms. And notice, that storm that we were tracking earlier in Culman County, as it moved into Blount County, it basically disappeared. It weakened really quickly. And so whatever boundary is in place is still sitting right here in Culman County, and as these storms push farther off to the east into Blount County, the likelihood is that they will weaken with time. All right, so our time now 7:14. We still have these 2 active tornado warnings in place for another 16 minutes officially until 7:30. Notice this storm that's near Dodge City, it has not moved much at all. Right along I-65, you don't want to be on I-65 right now. A lot of lightning, that rotation, the possible tornadoes situated right in this area, and that's drifting down toward the south and east. The second storm that we're tracking, the second tornado warning, also in effect until 7:30 on the eastern portions of Smith Lake, south of Crane Hill. If you live in Crane Hill, you're okay right now. South of you folks in Crane Hill, west of Bremen, and now west of Alabama Highway 69. And this storm also has a stronger core, heavier rainfall, and you can see the lightning strikes embedded in that storm as well. Both storms are moving about 20 miles an hour, and honestly, that may be a generous speed. It looks like these storms are crawling right now, just drifting down toward the south and to the southeast. Let's go ahead and get another storm track for you so you can see the motion of this storm. Fairview West, 729, Garden City at 7:42. I believe we just had a picture pop up. Is that correct? Cece, are you back there? Okay, we do have a picture to show you. This is courtesy of a National Weather Service off-duty meteorologist from the National Weather Service in Nashville, actually. Okay, so it was the National Weather Service in Nashville, an off-duty meteorologist evidently driving through Culman County, saw the lowering of the cloud base, and there you go. That definitely looks like a tornado on the ground. I don't know how long that tornado was on the ground. That is not a live picture. That was from earlier when these storms first formed. But that picture right there, that confirmation is what started this whole thing. That's what prompted the first tornado warning that was issued now about 45 minutes ago, just after 6:30 this evening. And so now we still have 2 active tornado warnings that are in place. Let's see if we have any new information coming in from the National Weather Service. It does not look like we have anything new just yet. No. Okay. Not yet. So we're still tracking these 2 storms. Both of them are still radar indicated storms from what we can tell, meaning that we don't have confirmation that either of these storms in the near recent past have produced an actual tornado. So there have been reports of tornadoes briefly touching down 15, 20, 30 minutes ago, but no reports have come in that I've seen or that the National Weather Service has seen in the last 5 to 10 minutes or so. There's your brand new WVTM 13 live Doppler radar sweep showing that we're still seeing a decent structure to both of these storms. The one that's now approaching Hanceville, we've called your name out quite a few times tonight. Right along I-65, a lot of lightning with this storm. That's drifting down toward the south and east. I gave you a storm track for that one just a second ago. I do want to put another storm track on for this other storm, the other tornado warned storm that's approaching Bremen. So it's going to be right in this area, drifting down toward the east and to the southeast at around 15 to 20 miles an hour. So if you live in Bremen, really over the next 10 minutes or so, the possible circulation will be moving your way, but you're already seeing the weather go downhill in Bremen. Colony 750, Blunt Springs, if this storm holds together long enough and moves into Blunt County, you could possibly deal with the worst of the weather over the next hour or so. But once again, to be honest, I really do expect that these storms will begin to weaken pretty quickly over the next 15 to 30 minutes or so. Our time, 7:18. Tornado warnings in effect until 7:30, another 12 minutes. And you can see live on our WVTM 13 live Doppler, the polygon, the shapes of these tornado warnings are constantly changing. What you're seeing, the National Weather Service office in Huntsville, who issues these warnings, they're coming in and they're taking away portions of the warning where the storm has already moved through a given location. And so that's why you see the overall shape of these polygons changing. And so once again, it's going to be in these red polygons that we're concerned with the possibility of a tornado over the next 12 minutes. Now, north and west of you folks in Bremen, the lightning strikes, they've dropped off really pretty quickly over the last 5 to 10 minutes. In fact, I'm not seeing any new lightning in this storm over the last couple of minutes. This storm showing a little more lightning, which is an indication that's a little stronger right now. But I'm also not seeing as much lightning as we were just about 20, 30 minutes ago when these storms were moving through the city of Culman. Big picture again on the WVTM 13 live Doppler, your most accurate look at current conditions here on a Saturday evening where the weather turned pretty wild in a short amount of time. We weren't expecting any severe weather tonight. There was the possibility of damaging wind gusts in some of the storms that did form earlier today. But as we move through the evening hours, it looks like these storms, they interacted with the boundary and they became tornadic, at least briefly. And so that's why we're obviously tracking these storms every step of the way. So our time now is 7:19, where the tornado warnings continue for another 11 minutes. The latest warning that was just updated from the Huntsville office, it says a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located over Dodge City and moving moving southeast now at 15 miles an hour. Now, both storms are moving at 15 miles an hour. They started at 30 miles an hour. They've gone down to 15 miles an hour. Another thing that you can take away from that The storm motion has slowed. That likely means that these storms are starting to weaken as the storm motion begins to drop down. But both storms still dangerous. The possibility of a tornado continues for both of these areas in Culman County. Once again, I want to expand the picture just so you can get your bearings for a second. If you live in the city of Culman, you're okay. These storms are down to your south, and they're going to stay down to your south. If you live in northern Blount County, you're okay. It's going to be this area right in here. So the southern half of Culman County that we're still concerned with for that potential of a tornado or two. Still no reports of damage. As of last check, we talked to Culman County. There were no reports of damage in Culman County as of about 25 minutes ago. Obviously, that may have changed as these storms continue to be tornado warned. But as of 20 minutes ago, there were no reports of damage, just the pictures that you saw just a little while ago. Also, other photos, other confirmation that I've seen on social media, on Twitter, on Facebook, of lowerings of the cloud base and brief, and I mean very brief, likely touchdowns here through portions of Culman County. Usually this time of the year, if there is a tornado, it's going to be weak. The one exception, sometimes when you have tropical systems that come in out of the Gulf of Mexico, you can get a lot more wind shear in place, and that can contribute to a stronger circulation. But usually with these kind of circulations that form with these summer pop-up pulse thunderstorms, they may interact with another boundary or two, drop a brief tornado, but a lot of times they are one brief, and they also are typically pretty weak. Our time now, 7:22. Tornado warnings continue until 7:30 for Culman County. Still 2 active tornado warnings on the map. There's a brand new sweep of the WVTM 13 live Doppler, obviously giving us your most up-to-date information as we get those sweeps every single minute, which shows the evolving structure of both of these thunderstorms. We can still call them thunderstorms because they are producing, obviously, lightning, thunder and lightning in both of these storms. So 2 very small storms, one located just now east of Dodge City, right along I-65. The core of the storm now shifting east of 65 and continuing to move to the east and to the southeast pretty slowly. It's drifting at about 15 miles an hour. The second storm that we're tracking west of Dodge City, that's going to be now just north and west of you folks in Bremen. So if you live in Bremen or anywhere nearby, you do need to be in your safe place as this storm is getting closer to your location. A few new lightning strikes indicating this storm still is capable of producing a tornado. The 2 active tornado warnings continue. And so once again, if you're anywhere in southern Culman County, you do need to be in your safe place right now until these tornado warnings are lifted. All right, so to recap, our time now 7:23. We came on air around 6:30, so almost an hour now that we've been on air giving you these continuous tornado warnings that have been in place for Culman County. These 2 warnings still in effect for another 7 minutes or so until 7:30. Both of these storms have exhibited rotation from time to time, whether it be very broad rotation or a little stronger rotation from time to time. They have shown a little bit of rotation. And so what we're going to do now is we're going to go zoom back in really close to Dodge City. We have video of some of the rotation that moved over Dodge City a little while ago. So if we can roll that video, we can see exactly what we're looking at. There you go. Very clearly, you can see that we do have rotation in this shot. We can't tell whether or not that's a tornado that is definitively on the ground, but obviously very strong rotation there in the lower levels of the atmosphere. I don't see any debris being lofted in the air in that shot either. And obviously that is in fairly rural areas, a lot of trees showing up. So if that tornado was on the ground, the likelihood is that you would see a little bit of debris in the air. So it's hard to tell whether or not it was on the ground or not in that particular shot, but obviously close enough to the ground with that kind of rotation that there could have been a tornado certainly occurring. And so that's what prompted both of these tornado warnings. So that's right in this area, Dodge City, and that was likely from the first storm that moved through. This now is storm number 2. The first storm is no longer severe, and here we go with storm number 3. This storm looks like it's intensified just a little bit over the last couple of minutes, now north and west still of you folks in Bremen. All right, we're going to put another couple of storm tracks on the map for you so you can see exactly which locations will be impacted here over the next half hour or so. The third storm, the one that's farthest to the west, That one is moving really slow. It's drifting at about 15 miles an hour to the east and to the southeast. So if you live in Bremen, really right now you need to be in your safe place. The core of the storm is really close to your location. Perhaps the rotation still just back off to your west. And then once again, if this storm survives its trek into Blount County, perhaps as late as 8:21 in Blunt Springs, but I do suspect that both of these storms will start to weaken by that point. In fact, the lead storm right in here that we have a tornado warning on, it's starting to weaken, it looks like, on the WVTM 13 live Doppler as it crosses over Alabama Highway 91 and approaches you folks in Garden City, where the rain is now picking up again. I'm not seeing as strong of an indication on this storm of rotation at this time. And in fact, that storm is beginning to leave the tornado warning box, the polygon. So if a new warning is going to be issued, it likely would have to be issued here very shortly if this storm is exhibiting still a little bit of weak rotation. But the storm behind it does look to be a little stronger. There's a core of lightning strikes located right there off of County Road 222 on the northwest side of Bremen. Once again, here's Alabama Highway 69, and so we're looking west of Highway 69, where the heavier rain is now occurring over County Road 222. And once again, all this is occurring in Culman County. So if you're watching anywhere else wondering what the weather is like in your location, it's obviously very quiet. I talked about this just a little while ago. 98% of us are seeing no rain whatsoever right now. It's just right here in Culman County that we're seeing the thunderstorms. Not a single lightning strike anywhere else across central Alabama. We do have a few showers and thunderstorms developing through portions of east central Mississippi, but those should weaken over the next 15 to 30 minutes as sunset does get a little closer. So the main area of concern continues to be the only area of concern here in southern Culman County. 2 tornado warnings still in effect. It looks like we have a new one that was just issued, and so that's going to be likely a continuation of the previous tornado warning, whereas the old one was set to expire in 3 minutes. Apparently, the National Weather Service office in Huntsville has determined that this storm is still showing enough rotation near Bremen, be in your safe place, Bremen, that this warning has been extended. And so we'll get the latest information on that warning in just a second. I'm not sure whether or not the other warning for this storm right in here, whether that's going to be extended as it approaches Garden City, because that one definitely does look to have weakened quite a bit over the last 30 to 45 minutes. So the area of concern right now, it's going to be right back in here. This area right in here, approaching Bremen. This is the area that we're seeing the rotation. It's still, I wouldn't call it a strong indication of rotation right now. And in fact, just over the last 15 to 30 minutes, we still have not seen any reports of confirmed touchdowns. So all the confirmed tornado touchdowns were in the 6 o'clock hour. Since we got to 7 o'clock, there have been no confirmed reports of touchdowns. That does not mean that a tornado is not occurring. But likely in this kind of situation, with these storms being so small in nature, in coverage, if you did live south of the particular storm, the tornado would likely be very visible in this situation. All right, so now this new tornado warning is in effect until 8 o'clock tonight. This is the brand new warning that extends down toward the south and east and does include portions of I-65 again. So we have a tornado warning in effect now until 8 o'clock tonight for this storm that's very close to the city of Bremen and approaching Alabama Highway 69. Let's get a wider view here again so you can get your bearings if you do live in this area. Winston County, you were dealing with the storms earlier. Smith Lake, you were dealing with the severe storms just about 15 to 30 minutes ago. You're now in the clear. Walker County, you're in the clear as these storms are now to your east. I do want to reiterate that these storms are moving, I should say drifting, to the east because they're only moving at about 10 to 15 miles an hour right now. But they're drifting to the east and to the southeast. So we'll watch very closely whether or not these storms still show rotation as they move into Blount County. But we've seen that as these storms try to move farther to the east into Blount County, like the first storm did, and now the second storm right here is trying to do, as it moves farther east, it weakens. So evidently, whatever interaction, whatever boundary that has been in place continues to reside smack dab right here in Culman County. And so that's why we still have that one active tornado warning. So once again, the other tornado warnings that were in effect have now been canceled or allowed to expire at 7:30. We have one active tornado warning that's now still in effect, and it's for this storm right here, approaching Bremen. So let's put another storm track on for you with that motion in mind, to the east and to the southeast at about 15 miles an hour. If you live in Bremen still, you've been showing up on our map now for quite a while, and each time I show you the storm track, the arrival time has gotten later and later, and that's because this storm really is just not moving very quickly whatsoever. The overall structure of the storm, just even in the last couple of sweeps of the WVTM 13 live Doppler, as we get that live data. Here comes a brand new sweep again. Each minute that data comes in. But looking at some of the most recent sweeps, it does look like this storm perhaps has weakened just a little bit. Not seeing as much heavy rainfall, not seeing as much lightning in this particular storm now over Bremen. So hopefully that's a sign that the storm will be weakening here as we go through the next 10 to 15 minutes. And so that's the only storm right now that we're tracking. The only active tornado warning is going to be right here in southern Culman County. I talked about this a while ago, so it's a good point to reiterate. Sunset time tonight is at 8:01. It's 7:31, so in exactly 30 minutes the sun sets. These storms during the summer months, I would say 90% of the time, are fueled off of the instability in the atmosphere. And so the instability increases as we go through the day, as the sun gets higher and higher in the sky, as temperatures begin to rise, the instability builds. And then once we get closer to sunset, that instability begins to wane as the sun angle goes lower and lower in the sky and temperatures begin to drop. There were some other ingredients in place today that allowed these storms to form and to persist. But for the most part, they're being fueled by the instability that's in place right now, and obviously some moderately strong wind shear that is continuing to reside really only through portions of Culman County right now. Our time, 7:32. You can see that on the banner there just underneath the WVTM 13 live Doppler. And our tornado warning continues until 8 p.m. So we're seeing two areas right now, one right in this location and one right in this location here. Those are the two areas that we likely could be seeing some broad rotation still occurring. So we're looking at right along Alabama Highway 69, passing through Bremen, and then the other area stretching back toward the easternmost reaches of Smith Lake. There's a brand new sweep again on the WVTM 13 live Doppler, still showing the same basic structure over the last couple of minutes. And so right in here, and again, right in here, are the two areas that there could be a little bit of rotation still occurring. Now, I want to stress this again is a radar-indicated tornado warning issued by the National Weather Service office in Huntsville. I want to stress what that means again. I've said it a few times tonight, but for folks that are just now tuning in, radar-indicated tornado warning means that the radar, the Doppler radar from the National Weather Service, is seeing the rotation in this storm, whether that be right here or right here, somewhere in this storm. When this warning was issued, there were signs of rotation, and so that's what prompted the tornado warning. Other tornado warnings that we saw earlier this evening, issued around 6:30 or so, when these storms first crossed out of Winston County and moved into Culman County, those were what we call confirmed tornadoes, meaning that someone on the ground saw the tornado actually touch down. And so we're not just relying on radar. We haven't seen any signs either of debris showing up on radar, which would be another sign of confirmed tornado. And so likely because we're not seeing debris, that's another likely telltale sign that these brief touchdowns, these brief tornadic touchdowns, are weak. And let's hope that continues. Still no reports of any damage, but you've seen the video that came out of Culman County just a little while ago of the rotation just above the tree line with the hill off in the distance. And you obviously saw the picture that we showed you about 15, 20 minutes ago, also in Culman County, which showed that lowering of the cloud base. So to set the stage again for you folks, 7:35, our current time here on this Saturday evening, we're looking at Culman County. I want to expand the view just a little bit so that you can see if you live in the city of Culman, you're completely in the clear. It's not even raining at your location anymore. You were under a tornado warning earlier this evening, about an hour ago. That is no longer in effect. So it's going to be the southern portions of Culman County that we're still watching very closely as this tornado warning continues until 8 o'clock tonight. Whatever rotation is occurring is currently located very close to Bremen, really close to County Road 222, County Road 114, Alabama Highway 69, and then stretching back to the west, County Road 143, 151, 127, County Road 282, and then now south and west of County Road 369. 2 new lightning strikes just in the last couple of minutes, a sign this storm still is holding on, still is strong enough to produce that possible tornado. The overall structure of the storm, as it moves farther to the east, it looks like it's doing basically what all the other storms have done. As it progresses farther to the east, it gradually weakens. Notice the first storm that we were tracking just a couple of minutes ago, that was tornado warned. There's hardly anything left to it. Just an area of moderate rainfall, now moving through Garden City with a couple of lightning strikes. The storm that was even out ahead of that, that's approaching Sneed in Blount County. Look at this. That was the first storm that was tornado warned. Hardly anything left with this storm. And so these storms are certainly weakening as they push out of Culman County. And we can see that there are no other storms back behind this cluster of storms that we're tracking. So the hope is, as this storm does move farther off to the east, it will continue to weaken. We are seeing one little notch right in here in the reflectivity. Hard to tell whether or not that is an area seeing any rotation right now. No new word from the National Weather Service office in Huntsville of any damage reports or any recent signs of tornado touchdowns or circulations from either viewers or people on the ground. All right, so we have a picture now. This is from Blount County 911. And so what you're looking at here, likely not a tornado. What you're looking at here, though, is a heavy downpour, basically. You're looking at a small isolated cell, and what you're seeing off in the distance, that's actually the rain shaft. That's the heavy rain that's falling out of that storm. Hard to say whether or not there could have been a brief touchdown somewhere in there, but you're not seeing a tornado in that picture. That's just a heavy thunderstorm that you're seeing off in the distance. But you can clearly see just how isolated those storms were, because just to the right of that storm, in the way that we were looking at that picture, the sun was shining. To the left, the sun was shining as well. So these storms are very isolated in nature tonight, and they're not very large. There's the big picture again. These storms, the coverage continues to lessen as well as we go through the next 30 minutes or so. Much of this will likely continue to weaken. Birmingham still dry, Tuscaloosa dry. For many of us tonight, we're not going to see any rain, certainly not severe weather as you get out of Culman County. Still just this one area that we're watching. No damage reports coming in over the last 30 minutes or so. Still have not seen any damage reports, in fact, from Culman County as these storms continue to push through. We're still watching this area right in here. Hard to tell whether or not there is any rotation in that particular portion of this storm as it gets closer to I-65 and obviously a higher traveled area, a higher traveled road, and then back off to the west, right along Alabama Highway 69. The rain continues to fall down pretty heavy. A few lightning strikes as well, just north of Bremen. Let's see if we have any new information coming in. The National Weather Service saying they still do not have any damage reports at this time. No damage reports at this time. So that's good news. We've had reports of brief touchdowns, but as of now, and this has been now an hour and 10 minutes since the first tornado warning was issued, and over the course of that hour and 10 minutes, there have still been no reports of any damage throughout Culman County from these particular thunderstorms. Let's get a wide view again so you can see exactly where these storms are occurring in relation to your location. Birmingham still quiet. Anniston, Tuscaloosa, all quiet. We have one small cell down to the south of Greene and Hale counties. That will likely weaken over the next 15 to 30 minutes. Notice the cells that we were watching back to our west in Mississippi. Those have greatly weakened just in the last 30 minutes as the instability begins to drop off. And so still the only area that we're even concerned with is right here in Culman County. The only area really seeing any thunderstorm activity in the WVTM 13 viewing area. All right, let's see. We do have some new information coming in right now. 740. Still looks like a potential tornado here in Culman County. Still radar indicated. And it's going to be somewhere in this area south of Dodge City, north of Bremen, right along Highway 69. And so it's going to be in this area right in here that we're still tracking that potential rotation. The core of the storm is now stretched out from west to east. You can see heavier rain now falling still over portions of Smith Lake. Now, north of Bremen, right along 69, right along 65, Interstate 65, it's raining as well. And this storm's now still drifting very slowly to the north, or rather to the east and to the southeast at only about 15 miles an hour. And that's probably the fastest it's going to be moving. It could even be moving slower than that. And as we put a storm track on for you, you can see there's not a lot of areas, not a lot of towns that are in the path of this storm over the next 15 to 30 minutes. But once again, it's important to note that this storm will be moving over, crossing over Interstate 65 here over the next half hour or so. And so if you do know anyone that's traveling 65 through Culman County, please let them know that this tornado-warned storm is just west of I-65 right now, near Bremen, near Dodge City, and it's drifting toward 65 and likely will arrive over the next 15 to 30 minutes. Let's go back to the first two storms that we were tracking. Storm number 1, that was this one right here. That was tornado warning. It has greatly weakened. Storm number 2 has continued to weaken as well. Obviously no longer tornado warned and much weaker than it was just even 10, 15, 20 minutes ago. One lone lightning strike with this particular storm. Notice the National Weather Service has trimmed this tornado warning again. So they've removed more locations that were under the original warning. So you can see it's just this area right in here, stretching basically from Smith Lake, just north of Bremen, Alabama Highway 69 to I-65. This is still a radar indicated tornado, even on the last update. So to recap again, the National Weather Service office in Huntsville has not had any damage reports since the first tornado warning was issued in Culman County right around 6:30. So about an hour and 15 minutes ago, there have not been any reports of tornado damage. Now, there have been reports of touchdowns, brief touchdowns. A National Weather Service employee did witness a brief touchdown. We showed you that picture a little while ago. We also had video in the Dodge City area. There's the picture. That was from the National Weather Service employee, an off-duty employee likely traveling through Culman County, witnessed this tornado. And you can see the lowering of the cloud base, the funnel, and what likely there is a tornado on the ground. Still hard to see even in that picture whether or not there is any damage being lofted into the air, whether that be trees being lofted into the air, debris of some sort. But as of right now, still no reports from Culman County EMA or from the National Weather Service office in Huntsville, which covers warnings for Culman County. No reports of any damage so far this evening. So that's the good news, and we're hoping that that continues through the life cycle of this particular storm. So to reset the scene for you, the time now is 7:43. 7:43 p.m. on our Saturday, and we're seeing this one storm, tornado warned in Culman County. That continues until 8 o'clock tonight. So another 16 minutes that this tornado warning's in place. I have not seen any indication whether or not this, let's see. Okay, so the National Weather Service in Huntsville is still saying that there are no indications that they're going to cancel this warning earlier than 8 o'clock. But they're still closely watching this storm. Obviously, the structure, just like we are, we're watching it on the WVTM 13 Live Doppler, getting those minute-by-minute looks at the evolving structure and strength of this particular storm. But the National Weather Service office in Huntsville saying, as of right now, no indications that this storm has weakened enough to allow them to cancel this particular tornado warning. So our time is now 7:44. We're continuing to see this storm stretched out, elongated, likely some of that wind shear interacting with whatever boundaries in place here and the instability that's in place to allow this thunderstorm to hold its structure. But notice it's getting strung out now, and that could be a sign that it begins to weaken here over the next 10 to 15 minutes. We've been talking about sunset time throughout the evening on and off. We're now basically 15 minutes away from sunset, and so those instability values are going to continue to decrease. And really, even looking at the bigger picture here through Culman County, just over the last 30 minutes or so, there's been a huge decrease in the coverage and intensity of these storms, and we're still now only tracking one active strong storm, really only one thunderstorm. This is the only thunderstorm in all of central Alabama. Still tornado warned here as it drifts down toward the south and to the east. Get a closer look here again so you can see some of the impacted locations on the WVTM 13 live Doppler. This is going to be right along Alabama Highway 69. This is now north and east of Bremen, County Road 270. Very heavy rain falling. You don't want to be in that area. County Road 238. There's Alabama Highway 69. That was a brand new sweep of the WVTM 13 live Doppler, of course, giving you minute-by-minute looks at those changing conditions. Such a valuable tool when we're tracking storms like this, whether it be during the fall, the spring, the winter, and now during the summer months. When these tornadic storms form, the WVTM 13 live Doppler has proven time and time again its value, being able to see the evolving structure and strength of these particular storms. Back off to the west, right around the Smith Lake area, still seeing very heavy rain. County Road 258. Looks like County Road 264 right here. You see several lightning strikes which have occurred just over the last 10 to 15 minutes. So still an active thunderstorm and the active tornado warning. Dodge City. We've been calling your name out quite a few times in the course of our coverage here, which we've been on since 6:30 this evening. So here's Dodge City. Once again, Alabama Highway 69. If you live on the north side of Dodge City, stretching back toward I-65, you're seeing some light rain right now, but you're in the clear on the north side of Dodge City. If you live south of Dodge City, you're still under that active tornado warning. I believe we have some video again from Dodge City. This is different video than what we were looking at just a little while ago. You can clearly see there off in the distance, you can see the circulation, the funnel, and what likely there is a tornado on the ground. Again, in that picture, it's hard to tell whether or not we're seeing any debris being lofted in the air, but a clear indication there of, at the very least, a very strong circulation near ground level, but likely what we could call a tornado. But of course, we won't know the official details on that until the National Weather Service does go out and survey these areas. Still no indications of any damage in any of these storms. Once again, that's from both Culman County and from the National Weather Service office in Huntsville. There have been no indications of any structural damage. That's the most important news that we have for you this evening. No damage reports as of now, and this is over the course of now an hour and 15 minutes that there have been no indications of any damage. So we're hoping that continues through the life cycle of this particular storm. It does look like it's starting to weaken. Once again, this is the westernmost storm that we were tracking earlier this evening. Notice the first two storms, they've greatly weakened. They've basically fallen apart here through portions of Blount County, near Sneed, Cleveland, Highway 231, 278. Near Aniana, just north of Aniana, dark skies and some light rain falling. But these storms, they've greatly weakened. It's the westernmost storm, the storm that's still in Culman County, that's trying to hold its own still. Near Dodge City, just south and west, that's where the core of the storm continues. We've been talking about this now for the last hour and a half, that evidently there was some sort of boundary in place this evening that allowed these storms to start to rotate. And we don't know exactly what kind of boundary that was, but it was likely left behind by some thunderstorms that rolled through this portion of the state earlier this morning through the early afternoon. There were some intense storms that moved through North Alabama earlier, likely some sort of boundary in place, just enough wind shear in the lower levels of the atmosphere that allowed these storms to start to rotate as they moved into Culman County. one active tornado warning, one active thunderstorm through all of central Alabama, and that continues right here between Bremen and Dodge City in the southern portions of Culman County. There's the big picture again. Notice hardly any of us even seeing rain on this Saturday. The WVTM 13 live Doppler, though, continues to run, continues to show you minute-by-minute looks, minute-by-minute changing conditions. That's your 3-minute advantage, giving you the advantage of seeing the evolving structure of these particular storms. The rain continues to fall through portions of Blount County, but it's going to be just right here through portions of Culman County. The heavier rain, the lightning, this thunderstorm, that remains on the map. So the active tornado warning continues until 8 p.m. this evening. The time right now, 7:50. For another 10 minutes, active tornado warning continues for portions of Culman County. Near Dodge City right now, we'll get a closer look again at some of the impacted roadways. Thankfully, this is mostly rural area of Culman County, but still, this storm is approaching I-65, which I talked about now for a little while. And as this storm approaches 65, obviously, if there's any sort of rotation in this storm as it approaches 65, that could be an issue. Latest from the National Weather Service, it does look like the National Weather Service office in Huntsville is going to expire this particular tornado warning. It looks like this storm is starting to weaken, but will stay on air until they officially do end up canceling this warning. So there's the big picture. We're looking at Culman County right now and Blount County. Still looking at that rain, moderately heavy in some locations in Blount County. This is basically the leftover rain from earlier thunderstorms that were in Culman County. Earlier thunderstorms that were tornado warned. We've shown you pictures now, several pictures. We've shown you a couple of video clips showing the lowering of the cloud base, showing you the rotation in the lower levels of the atmosphere, and what likely was a tornado. A couple of tornado touchdowns. We don't know how many. That'll be something that will have to be determined by the National Weather Service office in Huntsville. They may be able to determine that if they survey this area sometime tomorrow. But the other piece of good news that we continue to hold on to, as of 7:52, we've received no word from Culman County or from the National Weather Service office in Huntsville, which covers these storms in Culman County. We've received no word of any damage with this particular storm. All right. So the active tornado warning continues for another 8 minutes, but there are indications that the National Weather Service office will cancel this warning here very shortly, as it's now crossing over Alabama Highway 69 and now raining on I-65. So it's basically this area right in here that we've been watching for the circulation. There was a circulation there, and there could have been a little bit of a circulation right in this area. And it looks like the overall structure of the storm, notice there's really not much in the way of curvature with the reflectivity anymore. And so because of that, it does look like that this warning will be allowed to expire. So the latest information that I just got in from the National Weather Service in Huntsville, they're going to allow this warning to continue until 8 p.m. They're not going to cancel it just yet, just in case the storm does re-intensify, but they're seeing no indications anymore of rotation with this storm, and they do expect that they will allow this storm and this tornado warning for Culman County to expire at 8 p.m. Do we have more, another shot of those pictures and video that we can show again? Yes, thank you so much. This is probably the best picture that we can show you, and it goes very well with the narrative that we were just telling you. And this picture is showing what is very likely a tornado touchdown. And I can tell you that it's very likely a tornado touchdown because this is coming from an off-duty National Weather Service meteorologist who's relaying information from earlier this evening to the National Weather Service office in Huntsville. So this is from the National Weather Service office in Nashville, who's telling the Huntsville office that their off-duty meteorologist took this picture and saw a tornado actually touch down. Sometimes it's hard to tell whether or not a tornado actually touched down. Where's this picture from? So this picture is going to be the Dodge City exit off of 65, and very clearly, I mean, that is a very well-defined supercell structure with that particular storm, and likely the entire wall cloud there was rotating, and that's from Jennifer Beasley. More pictures. So there you go. There's another image of this storm off in the distance, and this is also going to be from that same area. This is the exit off of I-65, the Dodge City exit. And we saw several reports of tornado touchdowns or funnel clouds reported in this particular area. There's another picture from Jennifer Beasley, and I believe this was the video, correct? This is a video. If we can play that video, you can clearly see there's rotation. Very clearly, you can see that anticyclonic rotation off in the distance. And so what you're looking at there is what is likely a tornado on the ground. Hard to tell if it's completely on the ground, but it's very close, and definitely very strong rotation just off the ground. And that also was, I believe, the Dodge City exit off of I-65, or at least in that general vicinity there in the southern portions of Culman County. So here we are now at 7:56, 4 minutes away from the official expiration of this tornado warning. Still not seeing any indication of, Still not seeing any indication of damage. Let's see what National Weather Service is saying. We still have no reports of damage, although extensive photos on social media. This was certainly an unexpected event, and we appreciate your patience and expertise. So that's the National Weather Service basically confirming what I was telling y'all about just a little while ago, that this was a very unexpected event. During these summer months, we typically don't see these kind of situations. A lot of times the wind shear in the atmosphere just is not set up in a way that is conducive to get tornadoes to form. But for whatever reason this evening, with whatever boundaries were in place, these storms were able to interact with some sort of boundary, and we're able to start rotating through portions of Culman County. And it's hard to believe this is now going to be, I believe, the third storm in a row, maybe the fourth storm in a row that we were tracking through Culman County. And notice, as it gets closer again to Blount County, it's like there's just some sort of magical wall here in in Blount County that's not allowing these storms to continue through Blount County. So this storm, again, weakening as it approaches the Culman-Blount County line. Still heavy rainfall occurring on I-65. You can see that here in the Dodge City area. And this is the general location right here, the Dodge City exit off of 65, that you saw several of those pictures and video clips coming in from some viewers and some folks at the National Weather Service office, able to confirm that we did have tornado touchdowns. So once again, to recap, our time is now 7:58. We officially have this tornado warning that's in effect now for 2 more minutes. The National Weather Service in Huntsville has already said they will allow this warning to be canceled in 2 minutes as it has greatly weakened. And here's a brand new WVTM 13 live Doppler sweep showing that storm structure continuing to decrease in intensity and in organization as it crosses over I-65. But evidently, enough rotation in several of these storms to produce brief spin-up tornadoes just a little while ago. This all started at 6:30, an hour and a half ago. We went on air to tell you about these storms that just started to rotate, it seemed like out of nowhere, as they moved out of Winston County and into Culman County. And they continued for quite a while. Over the course of 90 minutes or so, these storms continued to exhibit that rotation. Sometimes it was broad. Other times it was much stronger. And obviously we've had several reports of touchdowns, and thankfully no reports of damage coming in so far tonight. And let's hope that that continues. Hopefully no areas were affected by a direct tornado landfall. Let's hope that this remained over rural areas, and the only damage that possibly did occur